know that ransomware is becoming extremely commonplace now, Graham, isn't it? And we've seen high-profile examples. We've seen this year the BBC, BA Boots. It's one of those big stories. They were all hit by a particular ransomware attack. Graham, what's your take on how serious a threat ransomware is?
Yes, well, it's extremely serious. Ransomware is the #1 attack vector for organisations. 62% of all attacks, actually, from the Verizon breach report stated that they involve ransomware. So we can see that the majority of the attacks going on in the modern world are involving ransomware and the day-to-day as we see it. Also, there is the attack of the supply chain, as you mentioned, with the Move It IT, I think, was the tool set. So there's that as well, which is going on. So it's kind of two sections to it. There's identity. Going after identity is firstly the one which we're going to go through mostly today, but there's also the attacks which take place against systems, applications and the like of that as well.
But we know that ransomware is one of the reasons why cyber insurance premiums have kept going up and up in recent years. And if we look at what the British Insurance Brokers Association says about this, they say that ransomware is top of mind and one of the leading sources of claims. A business is much more likely to fall victim to a ransomware or social engineering attack than their building burning down. Another very important aspect of cyber insurance, there's some very important requirements that cyber insurance providers will look for when assessing whether they provide cover to your organisation. Graham, I'm going to throw this over to you. Why is it that insurers look at third-party access, and what's the problem that they are concerned by?
Well, there's a few problems with third-party access. If you think about them being a third party in the first instance to the organisation that's using them, there can be lots of different challenges that can take place. Once you give someone that's not working, is external to your organisation, you're losing track of that identity. That is then using a password potentially that you may not know or have control over to your own systems anymore. Again, as I mentioned earlier, stolen credentials are the main attack for most breaches. So having those credentials stored and controlled within your network and then provisioned for users to single sign into devices without having access to those is a really good place to start with third parties.
And another one is endpoint management. Graham, on this point, could you explain a bit more about what endpoints are and why that's important, please?
Yeah, lots of companies struggle with this. It's very common. Endpoint privilege management is what we call it. If you think about users need to be productive in an organisation to do their job, they've got to be moving around quickly, accessing things to do things. I need to for my job, but I might need privilege with some of the things that I might be accessing with my job. So local admin rights was traditionally the way of doing things. You grant local admin rights to people, they have admin rights and they can do things on their endpoint. Problem is it makes it very insecure. So removing those rights, really good, but then it makes them unproductive. So you've got to have a Goldilocks in the middle really there, so that people can get access to the systems and applications that are required for their job, but they do not have access to local administration passwords or elevation of their account at all. Thank you.
And last but very much not least on this smaller list we have here, very important one, privileged accounts and user admin. We know from talking to cyber insurers recently that they are increasingly scrutinising these privileged accounts and user admin. It really has been cited as a key point for where the claims are coming from. There's clearly upsides and downsides to getting a cyber insurance policy. I guess really the obvious downside is the cost, which we've seen go up and up in recent years, and those particularly for small businesses, they may struggle with if they haven't got the kind of resources to do everything. So Graham, but on the other side, what's your take? Do you think it could prove even more costly if an organisation doesn't get insurance?
It will do eventually. If you just explain that gap appearing, that gap's going to get bigger. If you can't afford it now, you're not going to be able to afford it in 5 years. So it's a difficult one to think about. But the thing that I think is that the average cost of a breach is approaching £4 million for a ransomware attack now to recover from it, which is a lot of money, obviously, and all the downside for the business will have. But if you think about the insurance companies, their expertise, and as you mentioned earlier, they've got all the instant response stuff in place to help you recover from the attack. So you either recover from it on your own, or you're going to recover from it with someone supporting you, but you're paying an organisation for insurance purpose. So again, it's up to the customer, but insurance is there for a purpose, and it does help, especially in this scenario.
I guess a lot of it with any insurance, isn't it? It's kind of about peace of mind and knowing that it's sort of covered if the worst happens, financial losses particularly. And I guess that really probably a lot of people would say that cyber insurance is becoming a standard requirement to protect the business nowadays. Do you agree with that?
I think it will do. Not quite yet, but I think it may do. Compliance is we've seen a lot of compliance change this year. You've got things like multi-factor authentication is becoming predominantly forced now on privileged accounts, especially in some compliance drivers. This is all evolving towards that, becoming more and more stringent. This is what's going on, and insurance providers are going to become more and more stringent on the requirements that you need to have to meet the policy. And again, if you fall behind with that, how do you catch up again?